Hello, I'm Alan Lewis, also known as Visually Creative. I've just made this quick video to show some people the processes that are generally expected to be gone through when designing a visual identity for anything, be it a logo or be it a literal branding exercise. So this jumps in at week 6 of a PDF that I created for one of my semesters. From here on till the 12th week, we had a task to do, and I picked what my brief was, and that was to create a visual identity for a Falmouth University degree show for the art schools and design schools. So, research. This is a massive part of what goes into it. Now, to start with, I just did visual research. I found this article that had every single degree show for the year, and this was really good. This was a starting point, a springboard to see the visuals of some well-known and well-respected universities around the country. And of course I included Falmouth, seeing as that was what the brief was for, and it was for a project at university, not an actual live brief. So week 7, we move in, it's still researching, more visual research, checking out what kind of things they're doing, how they're displaying them, and in what manner. We get to week 8 and I managed to secure some interviews. I've called them user interviews because they were people who had actually previously helped create graduate shows for university. And I had a little set of questions. It was about 20-30 minute interview, and one of the key important messages from this, or questions I should say, and the message came from was this question: is there anyone else that they could advise that I speak to? And as it turned out, yes, they did, and they put me in touch with another person that had also helped with the same show. Now this is massive. This is direct insight into people that have already done it and their feedback as to how they thought about it retrospectively, what they may or may not have done differently and stuff like this. This is all valuable information. Now some process work. I talk a lot about rough sketches, rough prototyping, rough ideation. This is important. We don't want to invest too much time and effort too early on because it becomes expensive, right? Time is money. So I started out very loose, very rough. I knew that I wanted an idea of choice and duality, and this was part of the research and feedback. So onwards I moved. More research, more rough sketching. This is research because I create the rough sketches, I present it to the cohort and other people and get feedback on it, what they think, what they feel, potential ways to improve it, and so on. And at this stage I'm still being rough. The reason being is I don't get too attached to the idea, I'm not putting too much effort in, it is all loose stuff. At this point we're still getting feedback, there's no point putting too much effort in. I started to go into a mid-fi ideation just for some of these ideas to see what people would think. This was a celebratory 120 years logo that I created. Now in week 10 I started to move some of these mid-fi things into a more finished look, just again to get feedback to make sure these things are working. These are all assets that I've created. This was actually a bit of feedback. Someone said, why don't you zoom into certain areas, crop them out and see how they look? And do you know what? I thought they looked pretty interesting. Some of this was quite geometrically strong. Now that's where a lot of the research ended. Kind of. I still made some research bits, but this was moving more into the closer to looking finish done. Just getting those little bits of feedback. Is there just little things to alter? Those tweaks that I talk about occasionally. At this stage you might think it's ready, but it's still not quite ready. All I've done so far is validate that all of my ideas work, that people like them, and that they are actually appropriate. And this is week 12. This is where it gets polished properly. This is where the mock-ups would be used, or the presentation in its best possible light, and that's what I did. So I arranged it. I showed off the color palette and main assets. The only things that I did not create is this shield. This is a recreation of their shield crest, and I did not create this original F. That is all their stuff. The rest I created myself. Even these little things, they're easy to make. The industry brief deliverables. So these are the bits that will be expected by the end of the brief. Website design. You saw my very rough drawing, my sketches. Well, this is what it becomes. So this is the splash page. People would see select your visuals. They would hover over one or the other, and these would come up and show you that you have a choice to make. When you go in, there's not too much difference between them other than one's dark on light and one's light on dark, with the images kept to a grayscale. Slightly different blending mode just to give it that difference, but keeping its continuity, as you can see. I also mocked out what the menu drop down would be like. At this point I knew that I didn't need to keep on with both white on dark or dark on white, however you wanted to look at it. So I continued with the lighter version. And I fleshed out some of the pages, how they would be laid out. Some of them had placeholding text, some of them didn't. Tried to keep the information mostly in a Z formation because there isn't too much text. So the eyes will naturally go top left, top right. They will sweep down to the bottom left, take everything in the middle, and the final thing they will see is at the bottom right generally, and that is the 120 years celebration logo. Very similar, but here it is more heavy on what I want people to concentrate in the middle. So this is more of an F design. Generally it's used more for text-rich pages, but in this particular usage I felt it worked very well. We have to give variety, we have to give options, and onto the social media advertising. This was like a set of build-up posters. This bits here are just basically highlighting so you can see it against the dark background clearly. That isn't actually on the poster. The invitations, these are the e-invites. Again, the duality, the similarity. One of the feedbacks was they loved the idea of this choice and duality, but they warned me not to make too much effort for myself because too much work means you're not realistic, you can't, time manage it properly, and you can end up with a disaster. I even made a physical version. This is both sides of the physical version. I used a Cricut or Cricut Maker 3, some foil, and I used my Canon Pixma Pro 200 art printer. And the A2 posters, these are them in all their glory. Again, the duality, the either or, they look pretty much the same, but it's a style choice. And that was the end of my deliverables, and hopefully this has given you a little bit of an insight into the lengths and depths of research, ideation, feedback, and this continuous cycle right up until the final hurdle. And that's only when you really start polishing it, really put the effort in, when you're finally done, had all the feedback, and really you just want to present it to the world.